Hi, guys. Welcome to Dharma Talk. I am Rabia Ilahi, licensed psychotherapist and energy healer based out of Houston, Texas. The word Dharma can mean many things. It can be our purpose, it can be right and true action, it can be doing the right thing. And so I created Dharma Talk so that I can share with you right and true information that I've had the privilege to learn over the years through education, access, opportunity, and then my own life experiences. Um, my intention for this show is to be of the highest service to you that I can possibly be, to illuminate and enlighten you. And I say this not out of arrogance, but with the belief that when we know better, we do better, we make better choices, and better choices, however small, can lead to a better life. And a better life leads to more joy. And when we have joy, not only are we healthier mentally, emotionally, physically, we treat others um, in a more compassionate and empathetic way. And we need that right now. So, today's show, I know we had talked about entrepreneurship in the past. I want to specifically focus on money and mental health. A lot of people since the pandemic have switched into gig jobs, which I didn't know what they were until my niece told me, and starting their own businesses because some liked working at home, some lost their jobs, some were furloughed, and the entire economy has shifted. And so money is a big part of that. And I have an entrepreneur today as a guest, as well as a money expert. I think he's a money expert. So I want to focus on the money part and the mental health. We're at the beginning of a new year. It's 2022, so Happy New Year. And COVID, as we know, has sort of turned the world upside down, and that has affected many people's financial well-being. Inflation is up, interest rates are supposed to go up, and so borrowing money is going to be a lot more expensive. But anyway, the biggest reason I wanted to focus on money and mental health, because money, like sex, is one of the biggest issues that is presented by my clients in my office. And money, like sex, is loaded with all sorts of unconscious beliefs, unconscious biases, and money affects our everyday life and it affects all of our relationships. Money has also, when we don't have a good relationship with money, our mental health suffers. We are prone to more depression, anxiety, poor sleep, poor diet, and overall not being our best selves. And we often have conflicting thoughts around money. We want it, we need it, and we judge it. And like sex, we're not supposed to talk about it. So tonight, I want to bring it out in the open so that you can really look at your belief system around money, whether it's spending it, saving it, earning it, passing it forward. So I have a very special guest. My guest today is Connie Mack. He is president and founder of RIA Advisors, and RIA stands for Real Investment Advice. Connie founded RIA Advisors in Houston to deliver the highest standards of excellence with integrity and educating his clients and in meeting his clients' specific financial goals and challenges. He's also an entrepreneur. He started with a one-person office, and now he is one of the fastest growing investment boutique firms in Houston. Connie also gives back, which is, I think, part of what money can be used for. He's a supporter of and a co-chair of Career Gear Houston. I have to read this because it's impressive. And it's a nonprofit organization that helps former military servicemen transition to careers in the private sector, as well as former inmates and others in need of assistance in joining the workforce. So welcome, Connie Mack, to Dharma Talk.
Well, thank you. I need to hire you as my
PR
person. That was a great introduction.
Yep, you got that. Okay, so thank you for taking the time on a Tuesday evening to join me. I wanted to know that what made you, being in this money business for so many years, what made you decide to pick this career?
It's more of an accident.
Okay.
I knew I wanted to be in finance. I always loved working with numbers as a child.
Sorry.
But I am not. I didn't think I was an outgoing person.
Mm-hmm.
So my responsibility when I started the firm was to go out and talk about the value of my services to clients, develop the relationship, etc. So it requires a very extroverted personality.
Yeah.
So it's someone that's been conventionally tall. You see the basketball pictures in the back, awkward, shy, very counterintuitive.
Yeah.
But through athletics, I found that I like independence. I like control. So that's where I started to vector towards disciplines within finance that allowed me to have control of my future, control of my own hours, control of my own finances. So that's why I chose to get into this field and ultimately start my own business.
And the part about getting in control of finances, what do you see as being sort of like, I don't know, the financial pandemic, in the sense of how most people look at money, maybe how you looked at money growing up as opposed to what you learned later?
So my relationship with money is it may be extreme, right? So I'd like to tell particularly my younger clients the story of my 82 Thunderbird.
Oh, yeah.
And nobody in their right mind would drive a car from 1982 in the 2000s that didn't have AC, that didn't have FM radio, had a big dent on the side, but that car was the key to my financial freedom.
Explain that.
Well, you didn't have a car note. So if you are 22 coming out of college and your college debt, you more than likely going to be paying $300 to $700 a month to maintain that.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you have a car note of $300 to $500. So I'm able to save myself that extra money and start building towards that control that I ultimately wanted. And what that means is putting my monies into things that would generate me supporting income down the road. So I started investing in a lot of real estate. I lived very below my means. And that was my foundation to financial independence, to do things like starting a financial company. I also started an insurance agency, had pools of real estate investments. And that allowed me to make my own hours, so on and so forth. So when I talk about control and being able to control my own destiny, I don't have a superior telling me what I'm worth. Okay, your salary is this.
Yeah.
And no matter how hard you work, Your
Yeah.
salary is this.
Yeah.
And, now I'm in control. Okay, my output is dependent upon my input and what I put into the business.
So you can, well, you own your life
Right.
is what it sounds like.
Yes.
How was it in your social circle to be driving an 82 Thunderbird with a dent and no AC and no FM radio? That,
Um,
I know.
it was very difficult. The dating part was very comical.
Mm-hmm,
I couldn't sing, so I couldn't hold a note. If they wanted to listen to some type of music,
mm-hmm.
if they got hot, I couldn't drive fast enough with the windows down. So
Yeah.
it was a challenge.
Mm-hmm,
Going to your opening about the relationship with money, particularly our generation, we like to wear our wealth.
yes.
And, that saying, fake it until you make it, is actually the wrong way
Mm-hmm,
for true wealth accumulation mindset to behave.
mm-hmm,
It's okay to have those humble beginnings, but people at that age, that 22 to 35 age group, it's hard to see that light at the end of the tunnel.
yeah.
If you're driving that 82 Thunderbird, you got to get into a Toyota. Once you're in that Toyota, you got to get into that Lexus as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm,
And you begin to actually feel like you're being independent, but ultimately you're building a trap. And the trap is based upon debt accumulation.
mm-hmm,
So most people make their purchases based upon how much excess cash flow or room within their cash flow that they have. So if
mm-hmm.
I'm making, 5,000 a month and my expenditures are only 2,000 a month, I
Mm-hmm.
have 3,000 a month to spend. So I
Yeah.
can go and get a $2,500 mortgage. I
Yeah.
can go and get a $500 car note.
Mm-hmm.
Now I no longer have that freedom.
Yeah.
Every dollar that I make is now accounted for before I make it. And that's the trap that a lot of consumers find themselves into.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it becomes a snowball effect. Because what was the statement? You have to fake it until you make it. So
Yeah.
in order to get from that Toyota to a Lexus, maybe you now accumulate a debt in excess of what you're making.
Yeah.
And that snowball effect, that trap, you're starting to now accumulate a negative net worth. Now you're beholden to that job.
So in a way it was good then. There wasn't social media
Yes,
or Instagram.
that's right.
And because I want to point this out, I see this a lot. The keeping up of appearances.
Sure.
You had said our generation, your generation likes to wear their wealth.
Mm-hmm.
And fake it till you make it, somehow in this fantasy world of if I present myself this way on the outside. And now I think with social media, the pressures are like 100-fold from what they were. But yeah, so lucky you.
No, you are correct. It's one thing to hear the chatter, and what I always tell young people: the key to success is focus.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing how, if you are really focused on something, just like I just spoke to my nephew the other day, he nailed this job interview that was very important to him, that he was really focused on. And I said, fear is a good thing.
Yeah.
Because you're so fearful of losing this opportunity. He's not on social media. I rarely heard from him the whole week. And I had to actually check on him to see how he performed. So in today's environment,
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine being able to actually hear the whispers. And I knew folk was talking about me pretty bad back in the day, driving a beat up car.
Yeah.
Or even in college where I couldn't afford clothing, being a student athlete.
Mm-hmm.
My clothes were the gear that they gave me. So the sweats, that was it,
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't imagine being exposed to that level of scrutiny. So it makes the level of focus more acute for younger people that are trying to walk a certain path or accomplish a certain goal.
Yeah. Well said. So for you, because I want to go back to this a little bit later. I want to talk about how the way we deal with money can be affected by our self-esteem and self-worth.
Sure.
And confidence, and also what it takes to be free. You know, what it took for you, the sacrifices, and planning in the current moment for the future moment.
Sure.
Which I think is, it's not easy for a lot of us, but especially generations that are used to instant gratification.
Yes.
You know, because you didn't, I mean, thank God you had looks and charm, so you could override, you know, the car and
Yeah.
all of that stuff. And so when you see young people, you tell them about living, or like being very clear on what's important to spend on and how important it is to save.
Yes. And what I find myself talking to the investment community as a whole, no matter what generational demographic we're talking about, right now, the instant gratification was very prominent in the meme stock craze of last year that we're finally starting to see crash, right? So you look at GameStop, you look at AMC, two poster children of meme and speculative investing. Bitcoin has become very popular, and psychologically, these investment trends are all brought about by the potential of that instant gratification. You hear that 1 out of a million chance of someone making it big with that investment strategy, and everyone else going in to participate. It's a new version of the lottery syndrome, right?
Yes. And I was reading some stats on the people who buy lottery tickets. And many of them may spend $400 or over $400 a year on lottery tickets, where the chances of winning anything are infinitesimal, you know? But many people do not have $400 in savings.
That's right.
You know, for a flat tire. So I get it. So these like NSFs and all of this cryptocurrency stuff.
Yes. NFTs. Yes.
Oh, NFTs. Sorry.
Yes.
See, I don't know.
And you know, to your point, think about the people that invested in these investments 3 years ago versus people that got in the trend last year. Most of them are now maybe 20 to 50% underwater on their investments. So it is very much like you said, an endemic. The mental side of money. There are so many aspects to it that are troubling, that will create challenges throughout someone's life cycle. And we're starting to see that with the generation that's going to be behind the baby boomer generation, right? So when we talk about this great resignation, that's the new statement and term. The great resignation points to the fact that you have a generation, the baby boomers, that are much better prepared for retirement than future generations. My generation, your generation. So we are going to have a crisis of living standards. The average person has less than 100,000 in their 401k. And we're talking about a demographic of folk that are 35 to 55 years of age, who will be thinking about or looking to retire within the next 15 to 20 years. And when people understand that, okay, I need 10 times that amount or more to retire in a very short period of time, it does become mentally draining. It becomes a daunting task. So I always tell younger generations to it's a payment system. You either pay a smaller amount now, or
Mhm.
you pay a larger amount later. But at some point over your financial lifespan, you're going to have to make that sacrifice.
Yeah.
It's better for me to make that sacrifice as a 22-year-old because I have the flexibility, the choice, the energy,
Yes.
versus 65. You may not have the choice of how you sacrifice, but you're going to sacrifice.
Right. Right. So that also speaks to education, financial education and awareness of, because I mean, we should be learning this in middle school, on up.
Sure.
And I can see where even the conversation, many people wouldn't even be around that kind of conversation
Yes.
to learn, you know. When you deal with couples and their investments and finances, what do you see there? I know what I think is important for
Mhm.
them. What do you see on the business side of it, on the money side of it?
Um, it's I think it's a above average experience for my client base. Most of my clients are, you know, prepared financially. That's why they're sitting in front of me, right?
Yeah.
So, it goes to someone sitting in front of a mental health expert such as yourself,
Mhm.
someone sitting in front of a doctor. The first step is to admit you need help. And
Yes.
for someone to sit in front of a financial advisor, they are admitting that they need the help. So they are typically more communicative between one another,
Mhm.
but there still are deficiencies. And what are those deficiencies? That
Mhm.
one spouse is typically more involved than the other.
Yeah.
One is and it's not typically a male, it can be the female. And
Mhm.
I would say it's 60-40. 60% of the time it's the husbands, 40% of the time it's the wife. Um, the Now the biggest challenge when I talk to couples, and this is more personal in that I'm going through a few situations like that, and the situations that I'm dealing with are across the social economic scale.
Okay.
No one talks about end of life planning.
Yeah.
That is the biggest, most complicated challenge that I deal with on an ongoing basis.
Mm.
And I deal with, in some cases, very uber wealthy people. And, and I also deal with people who are just starting out. And, I'm having some unfortunate experiences of helping clients who are friends
Mhm.
or family or friends who have passed without having proper instruction left to
Uh,
their loved ones.
yeah.
So let's talk about it on both sides of the scale.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about someone who is on the lower side of the socioeconomic scale, something as simple as having a burial policy, a life insurance policy just to cover your funeral or burial cost.
Mhm.
Um, People don't know that just to even get cremated, it will cost you north of $5,000.
Yes,
And
that's surprising to me.
yes,
That okay.
and if you want to have any type of service to go along with the cremation, now you're getting closer to 10 to 15,000.
Mhm.
And you talk about social media. We've noticed this really over the last 24 months. How many GoFundMe pages do you
Yeah.
see?
Yeah.
And it's not just for your social media friends. It's people who are in the spotlight. It could be entertainers, whomever,
Mhm.
that did not adequately prepare, and their family members are left scrambling for monies to properly send them off.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean that they don't have money. It could be that their money is tied up and illiquid, There are a lot of complexities that go into it. But then on the other side of the scale, when you start talking about, either uber wealthy people or entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs is, I think, its own separate issue. But for wealthy individuals, you're dealing with additional complexities around making sure your instructions are clear.
Yeah.
Now you're navigating different relationships, such as equality, right? So if you have multiple children, making sure they are equally appreciated in some way in your final wishes. But also you're trying to balance that with realistic scenario. You may have one child who's doing very well financially and doesn't really need the money compared to the other. So your fear is, well, if I leave more to the child that needs more money, does the child that's successful think I love them less?
Yeah.
Right.
Or is getting punished for being successful.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that in of itself, both of these issues breed complacency. So they always put it off. Oh, I'll get to it. I'll get to it. And it's like a broken record. I'll talk to clients. They may have a few $1 million net worth and they're still, putting it off. And these are former business people who are used to deadlines and so on and so forth. It's just a very hard subject to talk about. Now, with entrepreneurs, that is probably the most problematic because, like myself, I started off as a solo entrepreneur. Now I have employees and I have partners. I have a good succession plan. But at some point in time, if I were to pass away, it's still hard for my wife to navigate all of the different business interests that I have, even though I'm, putting stuff in our shared drive and I'm writing things out and I'm sending emails to other trusted family members and friends to help her with this process. So even with the preparation that I'm doing, I still think she'll have a difficult time navigating that. So I couldn't imagine an entrepreneur not having an end of life plan.
Yeah.
And the biggest issue for it, Rabia, is that sometimes, or in most cases, the spouse is not wanting to disclose the level of success because they are afraid of the other spouse spending more money. That's typically when you start talking about people that have some form of means to worry about to pass along. That is typically the number one issue. They just, one spouse has a spending problem and the other spouse doesn't confront the issue. They choose to create a crutch by not disclosing. By saying, hey, instead of I make 150,000 a year, I only make 80,000 a year, and keep things that way. And that's where it gets very, very dangerous because the surviving spouse is left to really wade through waters that they're not prepared for.
Well, what you're talking about is financial infidelity, because there are all kinds of ways of betraying our partners and hiding money or not disclosing earnings, and so that both people are on the right hand knows what the left hand is doing, that kind of thing, so that maybe there is some what would you call it, parallel, or there's some sort of knowledge in real time of what's going on. And yes, I see that a lot. Actually, some of my entrepreneur couples where maybe one person, they have disclosed hiding money. I have to hide money before I file for divorce. Because that's all mine. I worked for it. And it's a tough thing. It's hard to have an intimate relationship when you're keeping that kind of a secret.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it was it was very hard for me, to be honest, in
Yeah.
that every person I met or dated before I got married,
Mm-hmm.
while I was on my ascent, you are always uh, you're just always very cautious. You're not very trusting.
Mm-hmm.
You hear the horror stories, etc.
Yeah.
So, I came up with telling, potential mates or whomever I was dating. Once we got to a certain point, it was like a reveal.
Mm-hmm.
My reveal was that I wanted a prenuptial agreement.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
the smoke behind their shoes as they were running away after I
Yeah.
said it. So,
Yeah.
but it was their chance to get away. I didn't want to get the relationship advanced to the
Mm-hmm.
point where emotions made it harder
Yeah.
to either tell them that I wanted a prenuptial agreement, or for them to, not take that personally,
Yeah.
So the timing of disclosing was important to me, but that is something that I do have in place, because you're right. I mean, as an entrepreneur, you should have protections in place. If it just makes good business sense,
Yeah.
not from the standpoint of, oh, I'm planning to fail at the marriage.
Correct.
Any proper financial plan focuses on contingencies.
Mm.
If I retire at 60 or I retire at 65,
Yeah.
I may work till I'm 75.
Yeah.
Same thing with the prenuptial agreement. I may never get divorced, but in
Mm-hmm.
case it happens, my personal goal was to make sure the attorneys didn't make money.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't necessarily trying to, do wrong by my wife. It was more of, I've seen personally how destructive to wealth the divorce process can be.
Very much so.
And that's why I wanted to make sure we got that taken care of up front.
I tell my couples that come in that I'm still way cheaper than a divorce.
Yeah.
So if we can find a way to, grow the marriage and the relationship, it's still much better in the long run financially, and it's worth the work. So then what kinds of conversations? Yes, the prenup conversation, but before you got married with your wife, the one who passed, I guess, that first test.
No, the one who didn't run.
Oh, the one who didn't run. Okay. And so what I see is, I think what you were saying, that one person spends a lot, one person may save a lot, and getting on the same page with values. What is it that we're working towards, or how do we see our life growing? What does that take to get there?
Yes.
So I'm wondering if you had, how do you spend money kind of conversation.
I do. I try not to have them directly, or I did, I should say, because again, money is emotional. And what you said is very accurate in that people don't like to talk about money. Now, the side note to that is, when you talk about wealth mentality, a lot of my wealthy clients, that was what was very eye-opening to me amongst their friends. They talk about their finances. They talk about the decisions they've made. They talk about their money. So we can definitely get to that a little bit later. But to your point, it's very hard to talk about money amongst your friends, much less someone that you are dating.
Yeah.
And in that respect, I would suggest more cost-effective places to go. I would evaluate how the whole handling of the check occurred. What's the philosophy there? That part of the conversation actually leads to a lot of telling things.
Yeah.
and it's not necessarily good or bad. It's just about that person's background, right? So, some people or some women feel that, to be chivalrous, you must pay for the dinner, and
Mm-hmm.
they're very
Every
traditional.
time.
Well, yes,
Yes.
and that, I'm not saying that that's good or bad. It was
Yeah.
bad for me. It was a red flag for me, but it told me that that person was used to a more traditional relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Now, where I would actually get into a direct conversation about that is okay, well, you work very hard for your money. You are very well educated.
Mm-hmm.
So if you get married, how do you plan on that dynamic playing out?
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm working, well, the husband should pay for everything. Okay, I'm paying for everything. So what is it that you're doing with your money?
Mm-hmm.
And and I can't speak for all men, but for me, I view that as a control situation or a controlling situation in two aspects.
Yeah.
So when we talked about the scenario of someone accumulating too much debt
Mm-hmm.
and being beholden to it,
Mm-hmm.
a husband could potentially be in the same situation, and
Mm-hmm.
they still have a very healthy fiscal discipline balance sheet, but they're paying for everything.
Yeah.
So there's no control of what they do with their own money, and
Mm-hmm.
all of the discretionary money is with the other spouse. So they are effectively controlling most of the decisions around
Mm-hmm.
enjoyment,
Yeah.
around your future. Hey, instead of spending this discretionary income on XYZ, let's save it and invest it. Well, it's the spouse's money, so they have to agree to that.
Yeah.
Um, so that's where the situation becomes very convoluted
Yeah.
and difficult to approach. But once I did have that conversation with them, it was pretty easy to tell whether or not this was someone that would be financially compatible with me.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. And I think those kinds of conversations also bring up some of our unconscious beliefs
Mm-hmm.
and biases about money, because I know that depending on what kind of household one grows up in,
Mm-hmm.
affluent or not, or middle class, or um, I'm first generation immigrant. I mean, my parents spent nothing. They earned a lot, but like a lot of immigrants, you're working 7 days a week, you're saving every single penny, and there can be a couple of different outcomes. Either the kids come out spending a lot, or they also kind of take on this, not hoarding, but to be safe, kind of thing. And then if someone hasn't been raised in that kind of mentality, I think it just makes for really good eye-opening conversations for people to also understand their own belief systems. Because we
Well,
don't know. We don't know we believe differently than somebody else
correct.
unless we have a conversation.
Correct. And I always tell couples to face that issue head on, right? So, like I said, I'm an extreme case that, with that 82 Thunderbird, I'm always looking at different things to head off potential difficulties, in the future. But what I could say for couples that are in a situation where they feel one spends more than the other,
Mm-hmm.
it always pays to address it head on.
Yeah.
And the second part of the advice, which is actually a little counterintuitive, you have to reward your partner
Mm-hmm.
if they start to meet you halfway.
Yeah.
You can't be so rigid with being financially disciplined to where you give your partner the perception that their life is going to change for the worse.
Yeah.
If you give them that intermittent reward that you both can enjoy and share.
Mm.
It's not like you're bribing, right? So you both take a trip, after a certain time you buy a nice car, but
Mm.
you feel you show them how much better you feel making that purchase, knowing that
Mhm.
you are financially strong enough to do it.
Yeah, because then it's a team.
Yes.
It's a team, and then you get to enjoy the wins
Correct.
with your teammate.
Yes.
So I think that's incredibly important. And I will say and I was one of these people that like stressed out. I didn't want to know the balance. I didn't want to open my bills. I just had so much anxiety around money that it took me a long time to start getting comfortable at looking
Mm.
at numbers in
Yeah.
black and white and not judging.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can feel ashamed for buying something you never wore again, or there's so many other things that come up with it, and it sometimes it helps to talk to an objective third party that kind of specializes in asking the right questions.
Yes.
And so then the conversation may not be as emotional and personal, because money is like sex,
Mm-hmm.
so personal. And the belief system is so individual to the person.
That's right.
Okay. So then your desire for freedom,
Mm-hmm.
for owning your life, meant sacrifices. It meant living below your means, which probably got you debt free at a very, very young age.
Yes, I was, between being a collegiate athlete and not having college debt, I was able to be debt free by the time I was in my, mid 20s.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely had a unique experience in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
And my when I started my career, it was very counterintuitive because I had a lot of capacity for debt,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I didn't have any, so at 25, 26, 27, I could have definitely charged up the card. I could have been in a, 3,000 a month mortgage and so on and so forth. But then my path would have been set.
Yeah.
Whether I wanted it to be at that time or not, because now you're beholden to that situation. You're pigeonholed.
I do think that one of the things I try to stress on every single episode is about having good information
Mm-hmm.
and really thinking about making good decisions. And they're not always short term. I mean, sometimes they suck in the
Mm-hmm.
short term,
Yes.
but um, it's caring enough about your future self,
That's right.
to put in the work.
Yeah.
And it's hard for me, like I think it is for a lot of people,
Correct.
to say no when I'm scrolling on Instagram and I see something, I'm like, oh my God, that looks so good on
Mm-hmm.
that person, not knowing all of the filtering, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
there's so much that goes into marketing. And I think we forget who owns our life
Correct.
when we live above our means.
Well, and our parents' generation, they
Mhm.
had a checkbook. I remember going to the grocery store. My mother had to. So you knew exactly what your balance was. So one of um, the drawbacks to enhanced technology and ease of payment and credit cards, and now you can just swipe
Yes.
your phone, right? Is that you don't know your spend rate.
Yeah.
And you don't know what you're spending your money on. And one of the things that, from an individual and couple perspective, is you want to have a financial date.
Mm-hmm.
You have a financial date with yourself. You sit down and you review your statements. I've identified fraud on my own accounts numerous times, right? If you're using your credit card at a gas station and then they, however way, get it, you start to notice a little dollar charge here and there because they're testing it to sell it, So that's one benefit. And then the second benefit, of course, is that you're able to keep things in front of you and
Yeah.
notice that, hey, I spent a lot on these new shoes this month. I'm not going to buy clothes for a while. Or I went out and ate every weekend this month. So you can ebb and flow. And from a couple's perspective, it's even more important.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because not only are you doing that exercise, you can start talking about future financial decisions and, just reconfirming. Hopefully you had the conversations at the beginning of the relationship. You're reconfirming some of the things that were already discussed because things change, right? People evolve. What's important to you then isn't as important to you now. So the benefit of having a financial date, individualized or as a couple, it pays dividends on an ongoing basis.
Do you recommend, because I know there are so many softwares now that can help people, and I think there's some free ones, like Mint.
Yes.
And so do you have sort of like your set 2 or 3 that you would maybe even advise, a 20 something starting out, start keeping track? Because they don't write on paper anymore.
That's true. That's true.
So there's nothing on paper, and I don't know how many make Excel spreadsheets. I still make Excel spreadsheets.
Yeah, I doubt they make Excel.
Yeah.
Mint is an excellent choice. Mint was more prominent back when financial institutions didn't have that software.
Right.
And financial institutions, to their credit, have stepped up to the plate technologically. So most big banks have a tool where you can track and create your own budget and so on and so forth. But if you have multiple accounts with more than one bank, then that's where Mint still has an edge and creates a lot of value, because you can aggregate all of your different accounts into that one app and be able to look at your snapshot of how you're spending, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I have played around with it, but I don't know it like I know Excel. So chime in here with what I'm about to say, but what I want the people viewing right now is to really understand that financial, or that money, is a central part, to our well-being. And the way we think about money has everything to do with our environment. And so I want people that haven't thought about this to ask the question that, what does money mean to me? What does it mean? Like the word money, what does that mean? How was money talked about in our families, or not talked about? Or what were comments that were made that we sort of pick up on as kids? Oh, look at that, that kind of environment. And to also look at our social circle. If we're not, like you said, it's surprising that a lot of the uber wealthy do talk about money and how they invest and how they're making money. But maybe if we're not uber wealthy, just to feel okay having a conversation about something that is a necessity.
Correct.
Money is what gets us food, water, shelter.
That's right.
And another question I have asked myself, and asked others is, do you think money is evil? What do you think of rich people? Are rich people somehow less moral than those that aren't rich? Is wanting to make money selfish? Like, these are questions that I want people to ask, because if we want to be wealthy, if we want to be a rich person, and yet unconsciously we believe rich people are somehow selfish, not as good as, or any of that, we won't get there, because no one wants to be somebody they're judging as an undesirable.
Sure.
Does
Now,
that
well,
make sense?
it makes sense. And I will say this, what I've noticed about the ultra wealthy, you have the lottery, let me just say, the lottery effect is basically, we spend our lives chasing that dream, that we are distracted from all of our other problems. And once we do create that wealth and make that money, all of the problems we were suppressing come back to the forefront. So that's why you hear, you look at Britney Spears and her conservatorship issue with her dad, people that have access to a lot of money at a very young age, there's nothing to distract them from their problems.
No.
Their personal problems. Yeah. So when you think of a wealthy person as being negative, so on and so forth, you don't know what they're dealing with. And it's hard to feel sorry for them because they're wealthy.
Yes.
But the saying of wealth being evil is because you no longer have that distraction to try to make it. And now you're just dealing with whatever issue you've always had. There's no hiding from it.
No, there isn't. There isn't. And money can't buy happiness in that sense. It does give us more access to learning, more access to opportunities to get help in dealing with things. But the question I want people to think about that want to be uber wealthy is how they're judging uber wealthy people. And to your point, when you say that, but you don't know what's going on with uber wealthy, to get to that level, if it's not been given to you, does take a ton of sacrifice. And what have you sacrificed along the way? Relationships, physical health, mental health, family time with your kids or your partner, being involved in your community, that kind of thing. And so I was really glad that you are believing in paying it forward, in using what you've worked for to also give access and opportunity to people that may not have the same access and opportunity due to life circumstances.
Right.
Okay. So for you guys watching, whether it's now or later on a recording, ask yourself, what does money mean to me? What do I think about the desire for money and having money? Do I think it is unholy or unspiritual, or somehow God favors sacrifice? And that also means financial sacrifice. And then the instant gratification. What is this thing bringing to me? The thing that I bought, what am I compensating for? And I'm guilty of it just like everyone else. I don't want to seem like I'm not. I have bought shoes when I can't buy the size clothing that I want, but the shoe still fits. And so it goes into sort of a self-esteem issue, and to be okay being uncomfortable in making sacrifices and delaying or planning now for future. And maybe, and Connie, you can speak to this, if a good way to go about it may be, what do I want the end of my life to look like? what lifestyle do I want? What, home or freedom do I want? And then work backwards. How do
Yeah.
I get there?
Well, and to your point earlier, the key question is what are you willing to sacrifice to get it?
Yeah.
Because when you talk about money and mental health, if you don't want to pay that price, and it's okay, understand that you may not achieve as much as you could potentially achieve.
Yeah.
And be okay with that lane
Yeah.
of life. And that's something that I've had to learn the hard way as an athlete. If I would have practiced more of my 20-foot jumpers, I wouldn't have to work as much to be an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
And in order to be an entrepreneur and to be successful, there are certain sacrifices I had to make, or else I would not have been an entrepreneur.
Yes.
So that's the second part of that. Yes, understand where you want to go and the goals you want to achieve, but also ask the question is what am I willing to sacrifice to get there?
Yeah. Good point. Good point. And I will say for entrepreneurs especially, because when it's your own, there isn't a start time and a stop time, and every entrepreneur I know is always sort of cringes at vacation and not working to build and grow business. And there are a lot of sacrifices that go with it. So I think being clear that if we want to get to a goal, this is what it will take. And then we get to choose whether or not we're willing to do that. And if not, then maybe there's another goal, So boiling everything down that, Connie, because I try not to go over an hour and this conversation went really quickly. What are like the top 2 or 3 money rules you would recommend? Well, maybe not necessarily clients, but to family members. What do you want to teach your kids about money? So yeah, what are some of the 1 or 2 things? There must be 1 or 2 things that you really want to make sure the people you love learn and understand.
Yeah, that's to your point. It's more time than a few minutes, but that I can explain. For my children, I want them to understand that money doesn't determine your worth.
Yeah.
To your point, money gives you access. And secondly, understand that we are a capitalistic society. And there are certain hard truths that come along with that.
Yes.
And there are certain sacrifices that come along with those truths. It's a system that we are stuck with, whether you want to change it or not, no matter your political background or beliefs. This is what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
And those are the 2 components that I want my children to have a firm understanding of.
So money doesn't determine worth.
No.
And the reality is, in the US, as of right now, we are still a capitalistic society. Yes. And there are realities and truths that come with that.
That's right.
And being aware and believing that you can choose, is critical.
Well, and one element of capitalism is that I talk about this impending retirement crisis we're going to have. There's not going to be a lot of sympathy for people in you and I's generation that don't have enough to live off of.
Yeah.
That may have to live in tiny homes or be home. We have a homeless crisis right now.
Yeah.
Those are aspects of capitalism that are just hard truths. We look at those folk and say, they must not have done something right. That's one of the hard truths of capitalism, whether you think it's right or wrong.
Yeah. And I want to say that I do believe that when we have worked hard and have through whatever paths, right, had the privilege of having access to knowledge and opportunity, that it's really important in, I think, having a meaningful life to use access and opportunity to make things better.
Mhm.
You know, whether it's sharing your knowledge or creating job opportunities or whatever to sort of level this uneven playing field
Mhm.
due to a lot of systemic issues
Mhm.
that we have that are often barriers to obtaining a certain level of financial freedom and security.
Mhm.
Uh, so I'm glad you are doing all of that, you know, and I think you're going to raise some really good kids.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
I can hear him in the background.
And so the one thing that someone can do today, like say, before you guys think about what money means and what am I willing to sacrifice, what do I really believe? What's one thing someone can do today?
Mhm. Well, we talked about your audience, your target audience, younger professionals.
Mm-hmm.
Take care of your debt first and
Okay.
build your foundation. It's counterintuitive. Everyone focuses on, as soon as they're working, contributing to a 401k,
Mhm.
which is okay. But my path to wealth creation, I actually didn't start contributing to my retirement account until I was in my late 20s to early 30s, because I spent most of my excess savings on building that foundation of what my goals were, which was to start my own business at some point. So a lot of my money went into real estate investments and making sure my debt was managed.
Okay, so the first thing maybe that people can look at is, what is their debt?
That's right.
What is their debt and what is the interest being charged on their debt?
That's right.
And maybe that is a place to start before necessarily looking at maxing out the contribution to your 401k.
Correct. Get your debt under control,
Yeah.
build your emergency fund, and then start contributing to your 401k up to the matching. Most
Mhm.
employers will match your contributions, and see how that feels, and then build it from there.
Okay. And I'll tell you guys this. The sooner you look at money and your relationship with money, the better you will sleep. Not at the beginning, but later. You will sleep better and be in better health because you have a certain peace of mind.
Mhm.
So, Connie, thank you very, very much.
It's a lot of fun. Thank you.
Yeah. We will probably have to do a part 2 because I didn't even look at any questions or comments. I'm sorry, guys, I didn't get to you. So, in closing, what I know for sure is that none of us does this life stuff alone.
Mhm.
And none of us does this life stuff when we believe we're broken or only have bits and pieces of ourselves. And I want everyone to remember how much you matter, and your feelings matter, your thoughts matter, your voice matters, your financial health matters, and that you are a statistical miracle. And I looked that up today, Connie. I want to tell you that every single person, it's 1 in 400 trillion chance that you are here alive today.
Hmm.
So what we think is an impossibility, it's not. You're already a miracle. And I want you to treat yourself that way. So next time, Connie, we have to do this again.
Yes, anytime.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.